Know the white, yet keep to the black. Be a model for the world. If you are a model for the world, the Tao inside you will strengthen, and you will return whole to your eternal beginning. Okay, but what does that mean? You see, the thing about something as spiritually vague as this Chinese philosophy is that even if you are to understand it yourself, it may be even more difficult to spread that understanding to others. After all, as Master Shifu would say,
every master must find his path to inner peace.
But if we were to try and translate the simplest lessons of Chinese philosophy to be able to communicate it to an audience suitable for all ages, what do you think would work best? Ah, yes, Kung Fu Panda. To me, this trilogy is up to par with things like Avatar: The Last Airbender. They're both influenced by Asian history and culture, as well as their spirituality and philosophy. But something that Kung Fu Panda has that Avatar doesn't is an inexplicit definition of good and evil. And that's not a fault of Avatar by any means. I still think it's a perfect show, but it's just a fact that in the show there's always a constant, clearly defined evil that's meant to be brought down by the end of the story. And I know what you're thinking. Kung Fu Panda has clearly defined villains. And yes, while that's true, the villains aren't necessarily painted as true representations of evil from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
What point of view? Well, it's no secret that Kung Fu Panda has a strong Chinese influence. It's very obvious. In particular, if we're looking at the spirituality of the trilogy, it shares a lot in common with what Daoism teaches. So throughout this video, I'll be using passages from the Tao Te Ching, written by Lao Tzu in the 4th century. Think of it almost as the Bible for Daoism, if that helps. So let's run through each of the Kung Fu Panda films and break down its spirituality and philosophy within the boundaries of Daoism. The most important step in creating your hero, as well as all other characters, is to connect and compare each to the others. John Truby. This is something that Kung Fu Panda does beautifully. But not only do the heroes and villains contrast each other just as well as Batman and the Joker, but they definitely take more of a Taoist approach to things, creating the idea that there really is no true evil in the world. That being said, we're going to break down characters from this movie and compare them. So let's get started with the one and the only Master Shifu. You thought I was gonna say Po. Student of the great Master Oogway and former member of the original Furious 5. Now, even though the film's main protagonist is Po, it's hard to ignore Shifu's journey in this film. After watching the filmmaker commentary for this first film, which I definitely recommend you do for any movie that you love, it became apparent that the director's intention with Shifu was to push him into the position that Oogway held. A complaint about this film that I hear often is that if Oogway stopped Tai Lung once before, why didn't he just stick around, make sure everything was aight, and then pop off to the spirit realm? And the answer is, Oogway is the perfect master. You see, according to the Tao Te Ching, the master does his job, and then stops. He understands that the universe is forever out of control, and that trying to dominate events goes against the current of the Tao. Oogway understood that he had done all he could to teach Shifu how to become a true master of Kung Fu. Oogway's job as a master is to help his students meet their potential and stop things from holding them back. Oogway knew that there was only one thing left that was holding Shifu back, and that was himself. Shifu very naturally looks to Master Oogway for all the answers and final say on anything. So by removing himself from the situation, Oogway allowed Shifu to take his mantle and fulfill his destiny. Shifu's biggest hurdle that he overcomes in the first film is the belief that, according to a Chinese proverb, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, meaning that you can't take something and turn it into something it's not. Shifu's misunderstanding here was that he thought it was impossible to take Po, a panda, and turn him into the great dragon warrior, because Po lacked years of training and, he's a panda. It's very clear both from the film and when the directors, via the commentary, outright state that Shifu perhaps had trained his whole life to become the dragon warrior himself, and when he couldn't do it, he raised his son to do the same. Shifu's understanding of the Dragon Warrior is that it's something to be earned through years of training and dedication. To become the Dragon Warrior, first, you must master Kung Fu. And this brings us to his adopted son, the ferocious Tai Lung.
We're dead. So very, very dead.
Dropped off at a young age at the foot of the Jade Palace, Tai Lung was taken in by Shifu and was raised on his own. He showed promise in the world of Kung Fu, so Shifu decided to train him. Yeah, we know all that stuff. But as I stated before, Shifu's goal in life was to create the Dragon Warrior, and since he couldn't do it to himself, he would raise a Dragon Warrior from childhood. In his eyes, there was no way that this wasn't going to work. So for all of Tai Lung's life, he was promised that one day he would have worked hard enough, trained hard enough, to earn himself that Dragon Scroll. But what Shifu and now Tai Lung have failed to realize is that the Dragon Scroll is not something to be earned. There's no situation where hard work and dedication will grant you the right to be called the Dragon Warrior. Tai Lung is not a representation of pure evil because he's simply one of Shifu's many mistakes. And Tai Lung chooses not to let himself be more than that, because the only thing in his mind that can get him past that is the Dragon Scroll. According to the Tao Te Ching, the Master, by residing in the Tao, sets an example for all beings. Because he doesn't display himself, people can see his light. Because he has nothing to prove, people can trust his words. Because he doesn't know who he is, people recognize themselves in him. Because he has no goal in mind, everything he does succeeds. The Dragon Warrior is not something you become just from reading the secret of the scroll. You're the Dragon Warrior when you're the true master of yourself. And this brings us to...
I'm the big fat panda.
Po is the king of not knowing who he is. That's what this whole dang trilogy's about. And on top of this, you can further define this by knowing that at the time of Tai Lung's training, the Dragon Warrior, Po, didn't even know it was him. He had only dreamed of that. Anyways, Po falls in on a ball of fire, and against all things that Shifu has ever known, Po is defined as the Dragon Warrior. And, the rest is history. But understand this. At this point in the film, every one of these three are in an uncomfortable spot. Tai Lung is imprisoned, wishing to be free. That's pretty uncomfortable. Shifu is distraught that some rando panda got to become the Dragon Warrior and is confused by his master's reasoning. And Po, even though he has dreamed of becoming a Kung Fu master all his life, is brought to believe that he isn't worthy of being the Dragon Warrior. And all of this is because of Master Shifu and his slightly misguided mind. So what do these three characters need to help them get out of the mud? Enter the Dragon Scroll. For all three of these characters, learning that the scroll is blank is the worst possible thing, at least at first. It discourages Po, sets Shifu in his old ways, and disregards what Tai Lung sees as his birthright. And that's to no fault of some greater evil lurking in the background. It's just simple life mistakes. But Po, in the greatest representation of yin and yang, doesn't learn the secret of the Dragon Scroll from a Kung Fu master, or even from the scroll itself, but from his own father.
The secret ingredient is nothing.
Huh?
And in the true nature of a master, Po offers the answer to his enemy.
There is no secret ingredient. It's just you.
If you don't know who you are, just look inside. And when Tai Lung looks inside at what's left of him, he doesn't think it's enough.
It's nothing!
So he continues down the road that got him lost in the first place. And as for Po, he becomes the hero of the story. He's finally in the right place where he can ask the right question.
And who am I?
Because he believes in himself, he doesn't try to convince others. Because he is content with himself, he doesn't need others' approval. Because he accepts himself, the whole world accepts him. And now, on to the big boy. There is no greater misfortune than underestimating your enemy. Underestimating your enemy means thinking that he is evil. Thus, you destroy your three treasures and become an enemy yourself. One concept that Daoism is most known for and embraces in all aspects is that of yin and yang. A simple concept that most people understand or at least have heard of. But something that is often misinterpreted is that yin and yang are not meant to represent the powerful light and powerful dark, good and evil. The Tao has two sides. Unlike other religions where the higher power is all good and perhaps has an all evil rival, Daoism teaches that we need to learn from both yin and yang. So while a lot of traditional stories introduce a pure evil, such as Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Avatar: The Last Airbender, etc., Kung Fu Panda, much like Daoism, understands that there are hidden intricacies here. And that's not to say that the aforementioned franchises don't understand this, but Kung Fu Panda knows that while the antagonist does need to be stopped because they're pursuing an evil path, there's still things that we can learn from them. Because at the end of the day, they're people too. Their path may be that of wrongdoing, but there's always hope for the individual. As Oogway once said,
"One often meets his destiny on the road he takes to avoid it."
in the first movie, Tai Lung would not have escaped if it weren't for Shifu taking the initiative to prevent his breakout. So in the true light of Yin and Yang, we meet Lord Shen. A prophecy once told him that he would be stopped by a warrior of black and white, and so he went down the dark path of trying to avoid his destiny, massacring a village of pandas. But if it weren't for this massacre, Po would have never wound up with the family he had and learned Kung Fu. Thus, by trying to avoid his fate, he only sealed it, creating his worst enemy. That son of a goose. Even though Po really is the victim in most of these situations, he fails to admit that he is. At the beginning of this film, Po asks his father,
How did I ever fit in this tiny basket?
wait, no, not that one.
Why didn't I like pants?
No, not that one.
And who am I?
There we go, that's the question we want. The villain he's going up against in this film has all of those answers he's looking for. And when he finds those answers, he would have every right to be angry, and let that anger define his rash actions. And Po actually does come very close to this when he goes to confront Shen, ruining the Furious Five's plan of destroying the factory. Even though he knows it's the wrong thing to do, he'll still do it because he just can't help himself. Luckily, Po is guided back on a course with, a little nudge. His near-death experience must have made him realize that anger won't solve the problem. He must figure out who he is on his own. And according to Master Shifu,
Anything is possible when you have inner peace.
so there was only one thing left to do: overcome the pain his enemies set in front of him, and forgive him. For Po cannot be defined by anyone other than himself. And from this, Po begins to get hold of the answer he was looking for.
I'm your son. I love you, Dad.
Those who know others are intelligent. Those who know themselves are truly wise. Those who master others are strong. Those who master themselves have true power. Those who know they have enough are truly wealthy. Those who persist will reach their goal. Those who keep their course have a strong will. Those who embrace death will not perish, but have life everlasting. And here we go. The wait is over. The master leads by emptying people's minds and filling their cores, by weakening their ambition and toughening their resolve. He helps people lose everything they know, everything they desire, and creates confusion in those who think that they know. Oh man, how do you come back from Kung Fu Panda 2? I don't know, man. I've heard a lot of people tell me that the third film may be the weakest of the three, and I'd have to agree. But just because the first two are better, that doesn't mean Kung Fu Panda 3 is less than amazing. So first, let's move on to one of the biggest shifts. You just can't beat Shen. He was the perfect villain to combat Po, challenging him in every way. And we move from that to a villain who is still pretty dang cool, don't get me wrong, but doesn't offer much of a personal conflict when it comes to Po. But someone he does yin and yang with pretty well is his old friend Master Oogway. Kai is known for taking the chi of others and using the power for himself. Oogway, on the other hand, gives chi. Now, we've never before seen him do this in a direct fashion, but remember back to the first film. Oogway gave up his position in the universe so that he wouldn't hold Shifu back anymore. And look where Shifu is now. Oogway liked to lift people up, and Kai liked to drag them down and handle things himself, stealing their power. And in Kung Fu Panda 3, we see how Oogway's quality shines through Po. But despite all this, there is one thing that Kai does to challenge Po, and in a story sense, it works magic when it comes to getting Po to where he needs to be. Kai is a raging bull, literally. And as soon as Kai makes his way back to the mortal realm, nothing stops him in his path. The beast of vengeance is here to take the chi of all Kung Fu. And this puts Po in a pretty icky, sticky, tricky spot. Very quickly, all of Kung Fu and the friendships he had built are being taken away from him, and Po isn't going to stand for that. So we have a super cool villain with a very threatening presence, pushing our hero to do what needs to be done. Good. So let's focus on Po's journey coming full circle, and it does this in many ways. Thanks to Po's journey in Kung Fu Panda 2, Po now knows who he is. He's his father's son and the Dragon Warrior. But Po hasn't been able to come to understand these answers because just after figuring out those two things, he becomes the new instructor for the Jade Palace and his biological father shows up. This all throws Po for a big loop, putting him in the spot that we're always finding him in, asking himself,
Why didn't I like pants?
No, not that one.
And who am I?
Yes, who am I? Sure, he's the Dragon Warrior, but how can he be if he can't even teach Tigress?
And she already knows Kung Fu!
And sure, he's the son of a goose, but then how does he even call himself a panda?
I'm not a master of chi, okay? I don't know if I'm the Dragon Warrior. I don't even know if I'm a panda. I don't know who I am.
All of this comes to a halt when his two dads finally have a talk and decide to help Po together. And through this, Po learns what Shifu learned in the first movie, and it's something that Shifu even tried to teach him in this movie, that
I'm not trying to turn you into me. I'm trying to turn you into you.
And at this moment, on the bridge with Tigress and his dads, it all clicks. He can do that same thing for every single panda in the village. Po's last moment of weakness immediately leads into his prime moment of strength, as all of the villagers choose to give their chi to Po, saving his life in the spirit realm. And thus, thanks to everything Po has learned from Oogway, Shifu, Mr. Ping, Lee, the Furious Five, and every villain he's crossed paths with, Po finally unlocked who he truly is, becoming the version of himself that he only dreamt of in the first film.
I am the Dragon Warrior.
True perfection seems imperfect, yet it is perfectly itself. True fullness seems empty, yet it is fully present. True straightness seems crooked. True wisdom seems foolish. True art seems artless. The master allows things to happen. She shapes events as they come. She steps out of the way and lets the Tao speak for itself. Something Po does every time for every one of his villains is that he offers the answer to them. And that's not something you usually do to your bad guy. According to the Tao Te Ching, a good traveler has no fixed plans and is not intent upon arriving. A good artist lets his intuition lead him wherever it wants. A good scientist has freed himself of concepts and keeps his mind open to what is. Thus, the master is available to all people and doesn't reject anyone. He is ready to use all situations and doesn't waste anything. This is called embodying the light. What is a good man but a bad man's teacher? What is a bad man but a good man's job? If you don't understand this, you will get lost, however intelligent you are. It is the great secret. And all within 3 movies, our main character starts by learning what the real question is, finding the answer, to fully understanding the answer and fulfilling his destiny. And this is what makes the trilogy so perfect. It ended on such a profound note, concluding Po's character arc as he follows in the footsteps of Shifu, who followed in the footsteps of Oogway. In the end, we all have to make the same decisions that faced Po. When asking the question, it's up to you whether you want to blame everything but yourself like Shen, or you can accept your past and deny it from ever defining you. You can believe that you deserve every honor and choose to dominate like Tai Lung, or you can go the way of the panda and just... And last but not least, you can choose to take power from others and take situations into your own hands. Or you can share that power and watch as others grow alongside you, strengthening your bond to the Tao. Empty your mind of all thoughts. Let your heart be at peace. Watch the turmoil of beings, but contemplate their return. Each separate being in the universe returns to the common source. Returning to the source is serenity. If you don't realize the source, you stumble in confusion and sorrow. When you realize where you come from, you naturally become tolerant, disinterested, amused, kind-hearted as a grandmother. dignified as a king. Immersed in the wonder of the Tao, you can deal with whatever life brings you, and when death comes, you are ready. So thank you for sticking around this long. Hopefully this video either taught you a little bit about Daoism or at least made you want to watch the Kung Fu Panda films again. So if you want to talk more Kung Fu Panda with me, just let me know down in the comments, or join my channel's very small Discord server. I would love to talk with you. And if you're interested in reading the Tao Te Ching, there are many different translations of it. I mainly used the versions translated by Stephen Mitchell as well as John H. MacDonald. You can purchase a copy of the Tao Te Ching really anywhere. It's an old book. Or you can find many versions online for free. I recommend the one at daoteching.org.uk because it easily lets you flip through the different chapters as well as giving you a variety of translations. So thanks for joining me here, and I'll see you all next time on Cuenin's Cove.
Skadoosh.